Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Boyle Heights Tiny Homes Community Meeting. Buenas noches a todos. Les quiero recordar que tenemos un intérprete disponible. Su nombre es Julia López y ella les va a asignar cómo registrarse si ocupan un intérprete en español.
Hello, everyone. This is Julia. If you need the interpretation in English, so the real language meeting, you need to select English. Y para los que van a escuchar la interpretación en español, deben escoger español. Esto aparece abajo en un pequeño mundo y ahí pueden escoger el idioma que desean escuchar.
Gracias, Julia. Thank you, Julia. Good evening, everyone. Again, welcome to our Boyle Heights Tiny Homes Community Meeting. This meeting is taking place on Monday, September 26th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. In attendance we have Councilmember Kevin DeLeon. For Councilmember Kevin DeLeon's staff, we also have my colleague Matthew Chavez, Nancy Torres, and Sarah Flaherty, who will be participating in the meeting. We also have our panelists, which will be Bob Pratt, the CEO of Volunteers of America, Los Angeles, as well as Veronica Lara, COO of Volunteers of America, Los Angeles. Please note the topic of discussion for today's meeting will be the Boyle Heights Tiny Homes Village, located at 850 North Mission Road, Los Angeles, which is a city-owned lot that will be breaking ground mid-October. This will make a huge impact in getting those who are unhoused in Boyle Heights area into housing. Please note this meeting will take place in order. We will begin with Councilmember Kevin DeLeon sharing some remarks, followed by a presentation from Bob Pratt, as well as Veronica Lara. In the Zoom, you will see a box that allows you, it's Q&A, so you're able, if you have any questions throughout the meeting, you can type in your question and it will be addressed towards the end of the meeting. If you want to speak, feel free to raise your hand and we will call on you as well in order. Please note, this is an hour-long meeting, so if for any reason we don't get to you or anything like that, we have your email and your contact information and you will be hearing from us, or feel free to reach out to our Boyle Heights office as well. This meeting is being recorded and it is going to be available on our website and the council member social media. For those that are calling in, please note that you are able to unmute if you press *9. And if you need to request to speak, you can press *6. So thank you very much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Councilmember Kevin DeLeon.
Thank you very much, Susana. Good evening to each and every one of you. Muy buenas noches. I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening to discuss what I believe is, without question, the critical issue of our times facing the city of Los Angeles. That is the issue of homelessness, la crisis humanitaria de los indigentes, los desamparados que están viviendo en nuestras calles, banquetas, callejones, en sus coches, hoy día en la ciudad de Los Ángeles. Now, let me begin by thanking VOA, the Volunteers of America, Los Angeles, one of the oldest and most respected service agencies providers in the entire profession, serving foster at youth risk and the unhoused. And I want to thank you for participating in tonight's community event and for the expertise that you bring to this deeply challenging issue. And perhaps you've heard me say this oftentimes, but I think it is worth repeating. Homelessness is the moral crisis of our time. It has become Los Angeles's indelible mark of shame. How we respond to this challenge is how history and future generations will judge our generation collectively as we move forward on this issue, or not. As chair of the Homelessness and Poverty Committee and as your council member, we are acting fast in getting those living on our streets, in our alleyways, in their cars, RVs, in our parks, on our sidewalks, getting them off the streets and putting a roof over their head sooner rather than later. And I think that our track record in CD14 proves that this is an urgent matter that we take very, very seriously. Now, with the most recent homeless count results, we have approximately 41,000 980 Angelinos, folks who are considered homeless today. That's both sheltered as well as unsheltered in the city limits of Los Angeles. Now here in our very own neighborhood, El Vecindario de Boyle Heights, and our amazing neighborhood of Boyle Heights, we have seen a rise in unsheltered individuals. I know you have seen it yourself. And we have also seen a very striking rise in homelessness among Latinos citywide. In fact, the last homeless count showed that we've had a 26% increase in homelessness among Latino families throughout the city of LA, making it a total of 44.5%. It's almost half of the overall unhoused population countywide. Now, the pandemic has taken many jobs away from Latinos, who are disproportionately our frontline workers, whether they work in restaurants, whether they work in hotels, whether they work in the manufacturing industry. These are Latinos who oftentimes, like in our own very neighborhood in Boyle Heights, we have multi-generations under one roof. Los abuelos, los hijos, hijos, padres hijos. You know, we have very dense community neighborhoods. We also have a lack of access to quality healthcare. And this has had a huge impact on the lives of Latinos who were disproportionately impacted due to the coronavirus, the COVID-19. And as a result, we have also seen individuals who've been forced out of their homes, out of their apartments, and now living in their cars, and unfortunately, sadly, and even worse, in our parks on the streets. The fact is, this is the sad reality. Our district, District 14, has the largest number of unhoused individuals in the entire city of Los Angeles. I want to put this in context because I want to elevate this to the magnitude that it deserves. We have more unhoused individuals than anywhere in the United States of America. And I'm not talking about the city of LA. I'm talking about City Council District 14, the district and a neighborhood in which we live in. We have more unhoused individuals than anywhere in the United States of America, except for 3 cities: New York City, Los Angeles as a whole in the aggregate, and the city of Chicago. So when we think about Detroit, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, when we think about Sacramento, when we think about Baltimore, Newark, when we think about Phoenix, Arizona, we have more unhoused individuals in City 14 than the homeless populations in its totality in those respective cities. But this has been an issue that's been with us for years, if not decades. If LA is the nation's epicenter of homelessness, then our district, my district, our district that we call home, that we love very much, is in fact ground zero. Now, many have heard me say this time and time again. We have more unhoused people than anywhere else in the country, except for a handful of cities. And the needs for housing solutions, it has to be focused on people and where they're living today. So housing has to be created in the neighborhoods in which we all live in, affordable housing. But in the immediate, we need to provide the interim housing to get folks off the street sooner rather than later. And that's why it is really critical, today's discussion that we have, the questions that you may have, the doubts, the anxieties, the panics, the hopes, the aspirations, you know, the misinformation, whatever it is that you have, it is time to ask those questions, which are critical. And we'll do our very best to answer your question. If we don't have the answer to your question, then I or my staff, the good folks at VOA, Volunteers America, they themselves will secure that question or that answer for you sooner rather than later. Now, I'll be coming on very quickly my 2-year anniversary, actually October 15th, because I took office a couple months prior because of the lack of political representation because the trials and tribulations of my predecessor. But let me say this. In the time that I have taken over City 14, we had a huge homeless population in El Sereno. And it almost immediately, we cleared out the homelessness encampment and we put a roof over the head. We provide a modicum of dignity and respect. In Highland Park, we built the largest tiny home village, not in LA or California, but in the United States of America. And then just a little north from that, up in Eagle Rock, up on Figueroa, almost near the corners intersection of Figueroa and Colorado, block or 2 up north on Fig, we also built a large tiny home village for our unhoused neighbors in the Eagle Rock neighborhood. Now we're coming to our neighborhood, the historic, amazing neighborhood of Boyle Heights, which is very rich, you know, in culture and tradition and history. a neighborhood that just last week, we renamed the street Vicente Fernandez Street, next to Plaza Mariachi, a neighborhood where a few months back, we opened up the 6th Street Bridge connecting the Arts District to the east side. It's a district that we're all proud of, but it's a district that needs help when we're talking about our unhoused neighbors. And that's why we're here to talk about Boyle Heights and specifically our unhoused neighbors and how we're gonna move with a sense of urgency to get them off the street and put the roof over their head. So we'll be talking about more in details about the encampments in Boyle Heights. We'll be talking more specifically what our plan is to get folks off the street in Boyle Heights and put a roof over their head. And if you have questions about meals, if you have questions, food, if you have questions about drug treatment, as well as access to mental health services and what tiny homes are like, what the interim beds look like, what the services are offered, this now is the time to ask. But I don't want you to be concerned that this is the last shot you get. We're going to talk about more about this. We've had a huge impact in Northeast LA, Eagle Rock, Highland Park, as well as El Sereno. Now we're here in the amazing, diverse, beautiful neighborhood, the Latino immigrant neighborhood of Boyle Heights. And we're gonna move very quickly as we get our unhoused neighbors off the street. So first and foremost, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule, coming here and sharing this hour with us tonight. I want to turn it over to Bob Prats, who is the president and CEO of Volunteers of America, Los Angeles, as well as Veronica Lara, who is the vice president and the COO, the chief operating officer of Volunteers of America, Los Angeles. I want to highlight that Bob has been with the organization for over half a century. That's 54 years. And has
Y han sido bastantes años y un extenso conocimiento. Como sabemos cómo es Estados Unidos, y así es como vamos a estar trabajando hoy. Y es una organización que no recibe ayuda de nadie más, sino lo hacen por un servicio a la comunidad. Y espero que podamos trabajar juntos y que podamos avanzar a las necesidades que tenemos. Entonces, a Bob y Verónica, muchas gracias.
Orlando is here as well.
Veo a Orlando, también a
My staff, I want to give a shout out to my staff. If you don't know, Matthew Ten Chavez, he is our point person when it comes to the issue of homelessness. Susana, thank you very much for leading us in Boyle Heights. We got great staff such as Nancy Torres, Manuel Ayala, and other folks who are with us here today. So with that, I'm gonna kick it over to you, Bob. So you and Veronica can give us a synopsis, and then we'll get down to the questions and answers that our folks would like very much. So with that, gracias a todos. Un abrazo, muy fuerte. Turn it over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Councilperson. Volunteers of America started in Boyle Heights in 1906 when it opened a orphanage. And it operated that orphanage on Boyle Avenue for over 50 years. And the orphanage closed when all orphanages were closing and services were going to foster care for children. And Veronica will talk a little bit when I introduce her about the other services that we're currently providing in Boyle Heights. Overall, Volunteers of America operates currently about 25 housing facilities of various sorts in various locations in the city of Los Angeles for homeless. And that includes women and children, it includes families, it includes veterans, seniors, runaway and homeless youth, and adult men and women who find themselves living on the street, in parks, under freeway overpasses and the like. And our services include tiny homes in other locations. I think the importance of tiny homes in terms of reaching out to the people that are living on the street is critical. These people, even though they don't have a home, in their mind, they have a community. Boyle Heights is their community. and they don't want to leave the community, for example, to be referred to a homeless shelter in another community, even though it might be not that far away. This is the community they identify with. And the only program that effectively they respond to is the tiny home program. And so that's why this is such an important facility to be initiating. And again, as the councilman pointed out, such a high need area. And now I'm going to pass it on to Veronica, who'll talk a little bit about some of our current services in the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Council Member Kevin De Leon. It is a pleasure to be of service to District 14. Volunteers of America, as Bob stated, goes back up to 1906 after the San Francisco earthquake, and to now, and it continues to evolve. Right now, we currently serve, and we've been providing the service for over 20 years in Roosevelt High. We provide an upper bound program, which is also a wonderful resource that comes to the community. We were able to get federal dollars through the Department of Education to provide services to first generation college students. In addition to that, we also had a Healthy Meals program funded by the California Endowment, which addressed food insecurity for students in Roosevelt High. In addition to that, we also partner with MAOF, the Mexican American Opportunity Foundation, and the Salesian Boys and Girls Club to provide an early Head Start program in the area of Boyle Heights. In addition to that, we also provide training to childcare providers so that they're able to provide quality services in their homes to families that are working families. In addition to that, we also have Head Start services throughout all of East LA. Serving, of course, that's also funded through the Department of Health and Human Services. And those are preschoolers. In addition to that, we have a building where we serve veterans, homeless veterans. We provide them with housing vouchers and also with other resources so that they could get off their feet, and we help them with everything related to housing. We also provide services to victims of human trafficking in that area and also other areas of LA County. Unfortunately, it's something that is very greatly needed for youth that are victims of this. So as you could tell, it's like a gamut of different services in District 14. And we hope to continue to bring additional dollars to the district to serve those in need. That's why this is like perfect for us, because we feel that this could connect all of the different services that we have with childcare, with the upper bound services and other services that we hope to bring. And with that, I want Susanna, can I hand it over to Amanda to share our story?
Yes, of course.
Amanda?
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Romero. I'm a senior program manager for Volunteers of America, Los Angeles, and I oversee some of our shelter programs. We currently operate 2 other tiny home villages, one in the city of Baldwin Park and one in the city of Montebello. And what I want to share with you today are some of the successes, specifically one of the first success stories that we had to come out of this program model from our Baldwin Park location. We had the opportunity to permanently house an elderly 77-year-old Latina woman who had been experiencing homelessness on and off for nearly 10 years. The reason that she fell into homelessness was because she was on a low fixed income and she couldn't afford to pay rent. And that's something that really can happen to anybody. And we definitely do in recent years see higher numbers of elderly folks that are homeless. So she was enrolled in our program, and she was in our program for about 3 months. We were able to provide her with access to meals, showers, case management, and a referral to housing services. Now she has her own 1-bedroom apartment in a senior living community, and her life has been forever changed for the better due to the support that she was able to get through this program. Through case management and supportive services, our goal is to help people find their way home. And with that, I'll hand it back to Veronica.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Amanda. I think now, Susana, do we hand it over to you for questions and answers?
Yes, thank you, Bob, Veronica, and Amanda for sharing. So now we're going to go ahead and open it up to any questions that our attendees may have. I do see a couple. I know someone, we have a question in the Q&A. So the question is by Julia Watzek, and they are asking, can we make the tiny home villages permanent housing? I'll let the council member attempt.
Let me answer that question. Thank you very much, Julia, for the question. Unfortunately, one of the challenges with making it permanent is the size of the tiny home itself. On average, it's 64 square feet, enough for 2 beds for 1 occupant, maximum 2 occupants. Of course, with its own locked door, it doesn't have its own bathroom or its own shower. That would be separate. The idea of the tiny homes are to use them as interim housing while we find the permanent solution, whether it is adaptive reuse, whether it's an apartment that already exists or they have a voucher and we could secure that apartment, a vacancy, or building permanent supportive housing. Or individuals, sometimes they go back to their family or their loved ones that take them back. And sometimes, unfortunately, sadly, we have folks who, quite frankly, don't belong in interim short-term housing, whether it be a tiny home, whether it be Project Room Key, which is a hotel, and they're better suited in an environment that's much more conducive to their needs because of severe mental illnesses. And that's an issue that we're grappling with right now with the County of Los Angeles. So the idea, the goal, the objective of the short-term housing is to build it very quickly. The idea is to get it up and ready, break ground in a couple weeks, sometime in October, mid-October. Get the construction, the grading, get all the utilities, piping for water and so forth, and actually have a ribbon cutting ceremony. Come late January, perhaps very early February. So I think a ballpark figure of maybe 3 months to get the housing done, the short-term housing in this case, so we can quickly at the same time do outreach. We're not going to wait till we open up those tiny homes. I think concurrently we're going to be doing outreach with our unhoused neighbors in Boyle Heights, Hollenbeck Park, and elsewhere, Pennsylvania, right behind White Memorial Hospital. We have a lot of folks right now that are in the industrial part of Boyle Heights, south of Olympic, in their own cars, in their on RVs. So we want to move very, very quickly. And I think your question with regards to permanent housing is a very important question, because ultimately we have to create the inventory, the stock, to move folks out of interim housing and into a much more permanent setting. Again, whether it's already built in terms of adaptive reuse, whether it's an apartment that's already been built and we have a voucher from HUD through HACLA or through LASA, or specifically building very quickly so we can create the permanent housing that's sorely needed by our unhoused neighbors. Next one, Susana.
Thank you, council member. So I'm going to go ahead, and we have a hand raised by Margarita Amador. So I'm going to go ahead and allow her to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Margarita.
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. So
Good
one of
afternoon,
my, I'm really thrilled to hear that we're going to get these tiny homes, because obviously it's going to address the crisis that we have right now in Boyle Heights. However, I think as part of the crisis that we see in the streets is that we have families that are homeless. And so I think at some point that has to also get addressed. Like, how do we address, families that are homeless, and how do we get them housed? And, and how do you get the unhoused to engage in services? I know I've worked in a permanent supportive housing setting, and nothing is mandatory. You cannot mandate anyone to accept services. However, I think what's key is the employees that each organization brings and has the ability to connect, right? Because once an employee can connect to their client, then they're able to get them to engage in the services that they so much need. You know, and second, my other question is legal status going to be a requirement for the unhoused? I know for permanent transitional housing to permanent housing, there's some requirements because HACLA is federally funded. They do have legal status requirements. But for specifically, at least to address the crisis that we have, will legal status be an issue to be able to, you know, hopefully, you know, take up one of these tiny homes?
Well, thank you very much, Margarita, and thank you very much for what you do for our community every single day in Boyle Heights. Let me take your last question first with regards to legal status. And your legal status does not matter. We don't ask for it. We don't check it. Quite frankly, we don't care. You know, we are the city of LA, arguably the most diverse city in the United States of America, arguably the most diverse city on planet Earth. And we're proud of our immigrant community, especially proud of our undocumented immigrant community. So if you're undocumented, if you're living in Hollenbeck Park or anywhere in Boyle Heights, you will be eligible for a tiny home. So no questions asked. The first question with regards to the families, and many families, and unfortunately because of COVID-19, because a job loss or two, the issue, which is a really poignant, you know, issue at this moment, which is the eviction moratorium, and whether the eviction moratorium is going to be terminated sooner rather than later. And when it does, you know, what are the safeguards from preventing many hardworking folks who are impacted by the coronavirus from actually falling into homelessness? And that's the last thing we want is another a tsunami, an avalanche of new folks falling into homelessness. And that's what we have to avoid and prevent at all costs. That being said, separate from the tiny home, so we have another facility in Boyle Heights that will be opening up, and this will be specifically for families. These are for women and for children. But to your point, we see a huge increase of single mothers in particular with their children, women who've been victims of severe domestic violence. And you compound that with a job loss or two, a lack of a network to bring you in and to take care of you during the most difficult, you know, periods of your life. So our tiny homes are for adults. They're not for families and children, but for those who are single mothers or even a family intact with their child, we're going to be looking for other facilities to keep the family intact as well too. And I think that's been part of the problem with, I think, what I call, and I say this under, you know, under Kevin De Leonoli, you know, but what I call the homeless industrial complex that has been disjointed and profoundly and deeply dysfunctional for years, if not decades, and how they separate folks, how they wouldn't let pets in and this shelter or that shelter. You know, it's been, you know, for the short time I've been here, it's been quite an education to see how profoundly the system is deeply dysfunctional. What we're trying to do is move with a sense of urgency, move with a sense of action, no theory, no rhetoric, but get things done and put a roof over their head, which is not the panacea. This doesn't deal with psychotherapeutic services or drug addictions with crystal meth, fentanyl, heroin, whatever it may be, trauma that we all carry inside in some form, way, or shape. But it stops the hemorrhaging, if you will, by putting a roof over their head. So to Margarita, Mago, thank you very much for your question. Susana, next one.
Thank you so much, Mago. Thank you, council member. Just going back to Margarita's question, I wanted to know, as a service provider, if Volunteers of America have anything to share as well, Bob or Matt or Veronica or anyone.
Well, I think, as the councilman said, this tiny home village has a particular purpose to recruit a particular segment of the homeless, those that are living on the street, some of whom maybe are new to living on the street. Some of them have been living on the street for a long time. There's an interesting thing about the encampments. The encampments see themselves as families of sorts. They've lived with one another for oftentimes for years. They identify with each other, they support each other, and some of them won't move off the street unless we can accommodate their small family. Again, they call it family. It's sort of the dysfunctional family, but nonetheless, that's their perception. The tiny home meets that. If there's 5 or 6 of them that have been together for a long time, they can all move into the tiny home village. And it's the only option that they're willing to embrace. And the other thing about tiny home, it's purely a way station. It's not an end. It's the beginning. And with all the case management and all the services, but you know, the most important thing that I heard in terms of a question, what makes a difference in this kind of a setting? What makes a difference are relationships. Relationships between staff, between caseworkers, and the people that we're serving. Everybody's sort of working together to support one another. Everybody having each other's back. And that's really the magic of the tiny home, is to create that positive environment, help these homeless understand they have options well beyond what they thought they had, that they literally can get off the street, that they can achieve permanent housing, they can achieve permanent employment. Obviously, some with disabilities, it's going to be a little bit of a different take on that. But the magic is creating a peer environment of support and respect. And that really makes a difference in terms of the homeless looking not inside, but outside at new opportunities for themselves.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move along to our next question. Our next caller who's going to be speaking, we're moving on to Vida Gashgai. Vida, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak. Go ahead, Vida.
Thank you, guys. How many units are there going to be, and where is it going to be located? And I have neighbors that I would like to help get in there. I would like to just share a quick story. There's an unhoused neighbor that was at Hollenbeck Park. She was moved out when they did the sweep at the park. We got her into a homeless shelter there in Highland Park. But because of her trauma and her drug abuse, to try to deal with her trauma from a very young age, a whole lifetime of trauma, you know, she went back to the park. And she's, I think she would benefit though from what you're saying, the whole points about the community aspect, that they need each other. She, you know, it was hard for her to go all the way to Highland Park. Her community was here in Boyle Heights. She wanted to be in Boyle Heights, but she has major trauma. There's no, you know, the services were not there for her. So she needs services, she needs care. She's disabled, she's not able to, yeah, there's so many lives that could be resurrected and brought back if the right services and support were there for them. And that's what they need. And I also have an 80-year-old homeless neighbor who's been homeless the entire time I've lived in Boyle Heights, since 2007. He was born in 1942, and he's missing his entire eye socket. I've talked to Matt Chavez about him before, and I hope he could get help. He would be a great candidate, and so will the other woman that I was talking about, and actually another woman I met today. So there's a lot of people that need help, and we hope we can help them there at those tiny home villages. They need the supportive services.
Thank you very much, Vita, for your questions. To answer your questions, the location will be on Mission Road, so it's 850 Mission Road, 90033. So it'll be right off Mission Road. It'll be on city property. It's a location that I went personally with the former general manager of LA Sanitation We have to negotiate and do some land swaps so we can get secure land as close as we can to Boyle Heights for our Boyle Heights community. And we got it. So we're very, very happy about that. We will break ground in a couple of weeks. In terms of the beds, we approximately have about 76 beds, of which 4 are ADA. We will, I'm sorry, 76 tiny homes. So we'll have 148 beds. So in terms of residents, we could have from a floor of roughly about 76 to a maximum of 148. Now this will, to Bob's point, I think, if we occupy 2 per tiny home, it's usually folks who know each other, who want to be with each other. We're not going to put folks who don't know each other and certainly don't want to be with each other. But, we want to keep these networks, these bonds that have been fostered and cultivated during these very difficult times in our lives. We want to keep them together, and hopefully that will help in terms of the healing. So we have from a floor to 76, of which 4 will be ADA, to a maximum of 100, I should say, a floor of 76 units, 76 beds, individuals, if it's all going to be all individually occupied, or 148 beds in total. And again, they'll be on 850 Mission Road. So thank you very much for your question. Go ahead, next one, Susana.
Thank you, Council Member. Thank you, Vida. So our next question is from Miguel Llamas. The question is, how is safety going to be addressed? Will there be security or police presence?
There will be security. I will turn it over to Bob, since they are our service provider, as well as Veronica. All of our sites, whether they are PRK and our home key, I should say, in El Sereno, for example, on Huntington Drive, whether it is our tiny home village that is administered and run by Hope of the Valley, or Union Station out of Pasadena, adjacent to our Eagle Rock tiny home village. We do have 24/7 security, but in this case, Bob, let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, definitely 24-hour, 7-day security to, basically maintain the integrity of what we call a village. And that includes not allowing outsiders to come into the property. This property is, in a sense, belongs to the residents. It's their home. And our job is to be protective of them. And our job concurrently is to work with the residents to help them understand the needs of the community, to help them understand that some of the things that maybe they've done in the past, they need no longer to do. So it's a two-way road, protecting the residents in the village and helping them understand essentially their obligation to the community. In this case, the community is stepping up and giving them a chance to fundamentally change their lives, not just for the short run, but for the long run. And part of what we do in terms of working with them is instilling that respect. We respect them, we treat them with dignity, but we also help them understand they need to respect the community. We want them to return to the mainstream as productive, happy, fulfilled citizens. And so we work at that continuously with the case management to help them have a different outlook on society, on the community, and to evolve into a much more positive individual.
Thank you, Bob. Our next question, it was removed, but I'm gonna go, I remember the question. And this might be similar to Betancourt's question. The initial question was from Pedro Marron, and it was, how are individuals selected? And then the question from Betancourt is, what is the proposed capacity of the tiny home village on Mission Road? And how many homes are available for Boyle Heights homeless individuals?
Let me go back to what I said earlier with regards to Beta. There's 76 tiny homes for our RDA. Each home tiny home has 2 beds. So conceivably, a baseline floor, we could have 76 residents in this tiny home that will be managed by Volunteers of America. We could have a maximum of 148 individuals. It all depends on how we pair, folks together, who comes in, specifically as it pertains to this tiny home village for Boyle Heights community. I will say this, and I can turn this over to Matthew if you want to chime in, as well as everyone from VOA too. Our folks will be coming into this tiny homes, will be coming in from Boyle Heights. That is a very important question, because these are part of what I would say my criticisms of the current system that exists with the spas, what they call the spas, and with LASA specifically, is that we will do the hard work, we will go the extra mile, the community will elevate itself in its voice and say, yes, we welcome it. And then the systems start placing folks from all over the city, from all over the county. And that, quite frankly, folks may disagree with me or not, and that's fine, but that alleviates the responsibility of other elected officials from doing what they need to do to take care of their unhoused neighbors. So our folks will be, exclusively, from the Boyle Heights neighborhood. Matthew, you want to add?
Yeah, thanks, council member. Yeah, I'll speak a little bit about how the outreach is going to go specifically for this, tiny home village. As we've done it in the Northeast area, in Highland Park and Eagle Rock. I mean, the council office was very hands-on, engaging with the community, because a lot of the community, the volunteers, were very aware of who these individuals were. Same as us, we were building that relationship. So when we had the tiny homes open up, we need the service providers to do the referrals and to do the actual intakes, but we were hands-on ensuring who was coming in. And if we were folks from outside areas, that we didn't turn them away, but we made sure that they got connected to the correct resource. So if they're coming from a specific different spa or a different even council office, we're directing them back to those resources there. So many of these folks that were, homeless, that are going to be homeless, that are homeless in Boyle Heights and some of these encampments, those are the ones we're working closely and getting in. As Veda mentioned, we'll work closely with the community members to make sure those folks are the ones that are getting connected and we're one of the first to move in to the tiny homes.
Thank you, Matt. I am going to move on to the next question. It might have been addressed a little bit, but I want to go ahead and ask her question. This is from Raquel, and the question is, if not having any documentation, will it be a barrier for eligibility to be able to stay in a tiny home?
Yeah, thank you, Raquel, for the question. And I think that Mago had asked the question, Margarita, originally, which is your legal status won't matter. It won't make a difference. If you are born here, if you become a naturalized citizen, if you're a legal permanent resident, if you're undocumented, we don't care. We're agnostic. We just want to help you and put a roof over your head. To Bob's point, provide you a pathway to recovery, a pathway where you can become a productive member of society, once again. So your legal status doesn't matter to us at all whatsoever.
Thank you, council member. And we are coming at 6:50, so we're 10 minutes away. So our next question at the Q&A is from Julia Watzek. And the question is there a time limit to how long residents can stay?
That's a very good question, and I'll have Bob and others share as well too. The ideal thing is, and I know, Julia, you had asked the original question if tiny homes could be converted into permanent housing, and who knows, maybe in the future, if we collapse several tiny homes and get creative, maybe we create, a different type of permanency, but you're unhoused, and the goal, the idea is to get a permanent roof over your head. So before you go, if you're at point A and to get to point C, is what we're securing right now is interim housing. That's B right now, and that comes in PRK, which are hotel rooms, and that's starting to sort of demobilize right now. In this case, we're building the tiny homes. Your residency is contingent on various factors. but more importantly, it's contingent on vacancies. It's contingent on building. It's contingent on a variety of factors. We want to move folks as quickly as possible. We don't want folks there for years. We don't even want folks there for a year. We want to move folks quickly into permanent housing. And that means this is not the panacea. This is just one, I think, huge step forward to give folks a modicum of dignity and respect in the interim period while we have to start building, we have to put a roof over their head. We have to start getting the vouchers, from HUD, which quite frankly, we don't have enough vouchers from HUD. We simply don't have enough. I think our friends in Congress have had their arms crossed, not understanding the magnitude of this crisis. We need more vouchers, and we also need more vacancies, because right now we have the tightest rental market, that I know, at least in recent memory. So our unhoused neighbors who have vouchers right now are competing with other unhoused neighbors. They're also competing with other folks who are not unhoused for that same vacancy, for that same apartment. So we got to get folks there. And Bob, perhaps you can share what the average stay is too, and the challenges that you folks have faced at VOA too, because it's not perfect. I wish it was a perfect assembly line going from a tent, a car, into a tiny home or to a hotel room. And then from there, boom, we can say your average stay is going to be 3 months, 4 months, because we found a location for you, but with a sense of permanency right there. So it's going to vary from
Es la permanencia. Entonces, esto va a depender de.
I'm fond of the statement, if you've seen one homeless, you've seen one homeless. Everybody homeless is different. So everybody that'll be coming into the tiny homes is going to have a different readiness quotient to be able to move on. Some of them maybe with an employment background, whether in this country or in another country, and maybe have some family stability opportunities. I could see them moving through very quickly. It's not going to be us determining the time. It's going to be each individual. And we're going to be treating each individual differently based on their needs, based on their wants, based on how long they've been homeless, a whole lot of factors. So I could see someone coming in and being ready to move out with resources that we're able to develop for that individual in 2 or 3 months. For somebody that's been longer homeless, some people have been on the street for 10 years, maybe even longer than 10 years. I was chastened to hear about the homeless neighbor that was born in 1942. I was born in 1942. So it's just going to be different based on the individuals, and I could see somebody going over 6 months. But I think our intent is to have a goal, and it's going to be a moving goal depending on the needs of our individual residents, of an average of 6 months. I think that's reasonable. Many could be sooner than that. The more chronically homeless, it's going to take a longer period of time. But I think based on our experience, the average 6 months makes sense.
I also just want to chime in and say that the program structure, because it's interim housing, technically is a 90-day program. And then we have the option to kind of reassess somebody's case at that point to see, do they need more time in the program? Are they ready to move out? Because like Bob said, every case is different. We may have somebody who comes in that has all of their vital documents, they have income, and that would be an easier case to move out and find housing. But on the other end of the spectrum, we could have somebody who has been homeless on the streets for a number of years, doesn't have an ID, doesn't have a social security card. They may or may not have income, or it may be very low. And then those are just additional steps that we have to take in order to get that individual housing ready. And, if we determine that there is somebody who maybe needs a higher level of care and maybe the program is not a good fit for them, then we'd take that extra step too, to find them a different program that is a good fit for them. But every case is different.
Thank you so much, Bob and Amanda.
Thank you, Bob.
Now, because we are close to 7 p.m., I do want to allow for the council member to give the closing remarks. And
Well, let me ask you a question, Susanna. Do we have more folks on the queue, as opposed to closing remarks?
sure,
If there's more folks on the queue, I'd rather
sure.
try to answer the questions.
Of course. So our next question on the Q&A is from Jacobo Estrada. The question is, will the tiny homes have workshops for folks like gardening, painting, cleaning, etc.? What is going to be done about obvious drug use in or near the tiny homes? How many chances does someone have after violating any rules set at the tiny homes before getting kicked out or asked to leave?
Those are all very good questions. And those are genuinely real life questions of the impacts of our neighborhoods. Either Bob or Veronica, since you're our program administrator, and I know that every service provider has a sort of a different set of rules. Why don't you share, Bob or Veronica or Amanda?
Yeah. I'll let Amanda answer that because she's currently working with tiny homes and she's doing that. So
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, we do, Volunteers of America has a good neighbor policy. So we do ask our residents that they are respectful of the surrounding community, that they don't loiter or, do any sort of illegal activity in the area or at all for that matter. But if it's something that does come to our attention, we do address it. It is a case-by-case basis. We tend to try to give that person an opportunity to change. But then if, it comes to it that it really is an issue that needs to be addressed and we can relocate that person to another shelter, or if it is a safety concern and we have to rely on our support from local law enforcement, we generally try not to go down that road if we can help it, but if we have to, we definitely do. And all of our staff are trained in de-escalation and crisis intervention, as well as mental health first aid, so that we're really able to address and try to prevent any issues before they get to that point. I know that there was a couple of points to that question, so I hope there was nothing that I left out.
Thank you, Amanda.
No, you did a great job, Amanda. Thank you.
Okay, our next question. So we have a couple more and then we'll go to closing remarks. It is from Araceli. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Araceli. Okay. Go ahead, Araceli. Araceli, you can unmute yourself. You're muted, Araceli.
Hello?
You're good, Araceli.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much for the good work and Kevin De Leon is doing. The community for Boyle Heights, they need much help. And thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I work with the homeless and I know the crisis that we have right now. And this is going to be very, very happy to the families and the other people. They are living in the street like a women's and others, especially the Boyle Heights. I'm so happy. I'm very happy for what they're doing. It's a great job they're doing. Thank you very much and I appreciate all the team. They're working very, very tight and I'm very happy right now. That's what I can say. I'm excited to put these people in the house, especially the weather is changing right now.
Araceli, let me just say to you a really heartfelt thank you to you, because you have been in the community organizing, you have been in the community, in particular Hollenbeck Park, with our unhoused neighbors almost every single day. And you have done so on your own. You weren't working with a service provider, you weren't working with LASA, you weren't working with this organization or that organization. You were on your own, and you are an incredible angel for our community in Boyle Heights. And I thank you and my staff from the bottom of my heart for the incredible work. You're always very constructive, and we just appreciate folks like you. Be rest assured that when we conduct our outreach efforts, things that you have been doing for quite some time, you will be part of those efforts, with us to engage, to talk, and to persuade folks. And the good thing is that, at least my experience, 9 times out of 10 folks say yes to housing, which is a really high percentage. So I just want to say thank you, Araceli, for everything you do for our community.
Thank you so much, Araceli. Thank you, council member. So we're going to go to our last question. Vida, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can ask your second question. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. What are we going to do with the severely mentally ill that are unhoused in our community that will not last in a tiny home? What is being open? How can we reopen the facilities that are up and down the state of California to institutionalize people who need to be institutionalized for care?
Wow, that's a tough one.
I'll take that question. It's not so much tough for me, because I think that what's happening right now is a travesty. It is outright criminal that we see folks running down the street, naked, screaming at the top of his or her lungs, and we allow them to die on our streets. And it is a point of deep frustration for me. As you may or may not know, there is current litigation on LA Alliance against the city of Los Angeles, as well as the county of Los Angeles. We have settled, and I have moved the city to settle with the Alliance. There's current litigation, I should say, with the county of Los Angeles that has not been finalized yet. They're trying to land a plane there. In the last minute negotiations, there was no increase in beds, psychiatric beds. We were able to secure 300 more psychiatric beds, which means specifically that if the deal is accepted by U.S. Federal Judge David Carter, that they will be legally obligated to produce 300 more beds. 300 beds is not enough. I think that we're missing a couple of zeros to that 300, but that's what we got. I've said this very clear, that it is absolutely horrific. It's a violation of human civil rights to see someone who's having a psychotic breakdown in the middle of the street, on our sidewalks, their family members, their loved ones, their friends, their neighbors, and we leave them there and we do nothing about it. I can't call LADWP because last time I checked, they don't have a psychiatric unit. I can't call building and safety because they have one neither. I cannot call the fire department or Rec and Parks and VOA, as much as work as they do, and Hope of the Valley, as well as Union Station. They do not do psychiatric work. They do not have psychotherapists on their staff to deal with those who are severely mentally ill. Those are individuals who are highly acute. And that's why we need, it's an issue of leadership. It's not an issue of empirical evidence or data. We don't need more PhDs, JDs, masters in social work, LCSWs within the context of what we know we need to do. We know what we need to do. And that's why I'm imploring our county of Los Angeles, Department of Mental Health, as well as the supervisors, to step up and do what's right. We need more beds because we cannot allow people to live in continued misery because they're not getting the help that they need. They're not getting the help that they deserve. They're not getting access to the psychotherapeutic services and the expertise, that the resources that the county has with an annual budget of not one, not two, but $3 billion annual budget for those who are highly acute. Now, let me be very clear here. It's not for individuals who have relationship problems and perhaps a marriage family therapist. These are individuals who are highly acute, which means your per capita basis on the $3 billion is much, much higher. And if that means we have to deal with issues, such as 5150, and we have to extend them, and we need state policies to be changed, then so be it. But that's what we need to do so we can take those individuals who need our help. They're our friends, they're our loved ones, they're our neighbors, they're our co-workers, who are dying, on the streets. And quite frankly, I think a couple points were made. And I think that we had, like Bob had said, earlier, whether it's tiny homes, whether it's permanent supportive housing, whether it is, PRK, Project Room Key, we have individuals who are experiencing homelessness for a whole variety of different reasons. Some folks, some bad luck here or there, lost a couple of jobs, got divorced, went into situational depression right there, and things just start spiraling down. They need a lift up so we can get them on a path to empower themselves and move forward. Some folks are chronically homeless and have become severely mentally ill. God forbid, I can't speak for Bob or Orlando or Amanda or my staff. God forbid, if I lost everything, my sense of self, and I stayed on the streets 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, I would be a very changed human being, and we've experienced now with folks who are numbing their pain, with crystal meth and now fentanyl has really devastated our community. So the point here with regards to those who are highly acute, who are severely mentally ill, and we know who they are because it doesn't take a PhD, a psychiatrist or a psychologist to really figure that one out. We know who they are and we know where they live specifically on the streets right now. You have my word, that I will continue to advocate both politically as well as legally to get the county to do their job by expanding the number of beds that are necessary so we can bring folks off the street and they can be in an environment that's safe, that's conducive for them, an environment where they can get the psychiatric help that they need. And for some folks, as folks might know, this is going to be a lifelong journey. This is not going to be a situation where, some medication, some, talk therapy, and, you're good to go. For some folks, it'll be lifelong, and it is what it is. It's our reality. That's what we deal with. We move forward, but we have to embrace them. We cannot just leave them on the streets. And that has been the reality. And as you all know, we have Skid Row in our district, and Skid Row is, ground zero for homelessness. There's not one area in Los Angeles, or for that matter, in the country, that has the highest concentration of unhoused individuals. In fact, let me say it is the poorest community in the United
Déjenme
States.
decirles que es la comunidad más pobre.
United States of America. It's not Compton, it's not South LA, it's not Watts. And to me, that is a travesty. That is a violation, gross violation of human rights, but we've allowed it to happen. We've allowed it to fester for years, if not decades. Now is a time for action. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. And that's why, when I took over, we moved with a sense of urgency with El Sereno, Highland Park, Eagle Rock. Now we're coming into Boyle Heights, and that's why I'm happy with Volunteers of America, Orlando and Bob, Amanda, Veronica, and then we're going to get to Skid Row. So I'm not going to allow the political ecosystem that has normalized, let me say one last thing. When I engage with homeless folks, as long as with my staff, they're not a problem. They're not a problem. The problem has been all the smarty folks, the PhDs, the MDs, the JDs, the masters of social work, the bureaucracies, the culture of systems that don't work, that are deeply dysfunctional and disjointed, and the outcomes that we desire to help our folks and get them off the street, put a roof over their head, and the wraparound services for those who need it is so distorted that they don't get the help that they need. If things work perfectly, it would still be hard to deal with this humanitarian crisis, institutional racism, deep inequities in our capital economic systems, the issue of severe mental illnesses, trauma, all these factors. It would still be so difficult. So a lot of this is the internal firing squad of bureaucracies who, quite frankly, are profoundly deeply disjointed. So that's why when it comes to those who are highly acute, I'm going to work my darnest to challenge the status quo and the institutions and the establishments, regardless of who occupies the jobs at the supervisorial level, to start moving with a sense of urgency to get our folks off the street and we can provide them a safe environment. I apologize to everybody, for my commentary, for my opinion editorial, but that's what I strongly believe as we deal with our unhoused neighbors. So with that, Susana, if there's no more other questions, I do want to thank, Bob Pratt, our CEO of Volunteers of America, Orlando, our COO and Vice President, Veronica Lara, to Amanda, thank you very much. Romero, for all that you do, to all the staff here to Matthew Tenchavez, thank you for working your tail off every single day out there in the trenches. Susana and Nancy and Manuela Ayala. I'm really glad that we had an opportunity to engage with all of our folks in Boyle Heights to address the issue, the humanitarian crisis that is homelessness, specifically in Boyle Heights. So homelessness is a priority for me throughout my city council campaign. I intend to finish the job that I started by getting folks off the streets and into safe housing. So I'm glad that you've been able to hear from folks who have been in the trenches for decades. You know, they've done God's work, you know, and I have much respect for Bob and Orlando and Veronica and Amanda and what they do, because they're the practitioners who are in the trenches every single day, engaging with all of our fellow neighbors, regardless of who they are, where they come from, regardless of the color of their skin, which God they pray to, and yes, their legal status. They're all human beings that deserve dignity and respect. So I hope that you feel as confident as I do about the great work that collectively we've been able to do to date on the issue of homelessness, and how that experience will translate, no doubt, I believe, into success for our community here in Boyle Heights. And you know, when folks say, hey, you know, listen, I heard that the LAPD showed up in Eagle Rock, or I hope the LAPD showed up, you know, in Highland Park. You know what? That shouldn't be shocking, because homelessness is hard. Homelessness is tough. And that's what happens. It's not a perfect world. A tiny home or PRK or permanent supportive housing is not the panacea. You bring all the trauma with us, but now it's an environment that's safe. And that's why, you know, providing the psychotherapy service and connecting folks, and to Bob's point, hopefully, knock on wood, the average, you know, stay is 6 months or sooner. We can move folks quickly into the housing that they deserve. I don't get into how you're gonna end up homeless, you know, I'm agnostic to that. I just want to help you right now. So if you have any additional questions, do not hesitate to reach out to my office, and we'll be happy to answer those questions. We'll do our very best. And sometimes we don't have the answers to all the questions, you know, to the very complicated, vexing issue of homelessness, but we will do our best. And finally, I want to thank, you know, again, each and every one of you, our community leaders, and to the many local residents who joined us on this Zoom call. And we thank you for stepping up and supporting us and making sure we provide the local housing solutions. That's the only way. That's the only way we're going to get out of this crisis, you know, is providing the housing, the roof over their head. So to each and every one of you, thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Muy buenas noches. Gracias a todos.
Thank you so much, Council Member. Thank you to Volunteers of America, the team, and all of our attendees. Thank you so much for your questions, and we will be in touch. Have a great night.
Good night, all.
Thank you.